Hello, hello. Today, I want you to meet Elinor Moshe. Elinor, her story is about success became a suffocation. There was no truth left in her life. She'd be living under the illusion that she had it all together, that she was being herself in the world, yet she wasn't, and she hadn't been for decades. Her whole reality wasn't based on her truth. To the outside world, she presented as a strong, confident, independent, and successful woman. Yet her internal world was marred, diminished, void of life force, void of the permission to allow her personal truths to come to the surface. Does any of this feel familiar? I know when I looked at your intake and your links you sent me, Eleanor, I resonated. I heard myself in so much of your story. So thank you for joining me on the show today.
A pleasure and privilege to bring more of this to light with the mission that you're serving with your podcast, because we're not given the space, the permission, so many things to even allow ourselves to look into the places that we don't want to. And I'm not saying I've looked into every dimension and aspect of self. Absolutely not. There are parts that I too have not looked, but we are, as seekers, I love the word that you said before, we actively and consciously seek to bring those parts to light. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. And we've already just dived in already, but please take us back to that catalyst for you, that time, that messy, challenging, that where you found yourself, void of life force, void of the permission to hear your personal truth. Take us back there and tell us a little bit about that time and how that became the transformation for you and how you pulled yourself out, moved
Yeah,
yourself out.
yeah, absolutely. The first spiritual awakening, call it what you want, package it as you want. It's spiritual breakdown, emotional, mental, whatever it
Yes.
was in 2021. There was so much happening in the world, and that was extremely destabilizing. It was the tower card of tarot all round. And that was really disruptive. And that opened up so many paradigms within that
Mm.
was both destructive and freeing at the same time. And you think that's it. It's like, okay, I understand it all now. It's all good. Things were not good for her. Whilst things, I guess, stabilized, that was a period where I started making inferior decisions for myself, seeking that safety and security in the external, as I have been deeply conditioned to do. So
Mm.
fast forward a little bit, it started off as, a great idea until what I was unconsciously doing was repeating the enmeshment dynamics that I have only ever known and grown up with and been conditioned to at a very deep soul level. Fast forward to April 2023, that was the first time that I went out of my environment. And sometimes you need to be thrust out of your environment. I
Mm.
went on a family holiday with my parents at 32 overseas, and that should be enough to say something, but it didn't, right? And I went, and that was when I got a cosmic slap in the face. It hit me like a brick. There was science beforehand. I was not listening because I'm not conditioned to listen to myself either. So the conditioning works for better or for worse at that time. And I was then 32. Not only had I split realities, there, if I had lifted the unconscious hood at that time alone, it was on fire and the smoke was coming out everywhere. And I'm sitting
Mm.
there like the Elmo meme, thinking everything is fine. I just need to, hustle harder and wake up at 5 a.m. and all of this, narrative,
Mm.
narrative.
Mm.
And it was an evening where I was going to dinner with my cousin, and my mother, quote unquote, did not allow me to walk 600 meters around the corner to meet her. So that triggered a conversation with my then best friend, now partner. And I was like, this just happened. And it's like, and I said to him, I don't have any soul left, or something along those lines. And he said something along the lines of, well, you don't. And it's like, of
Mm.
course. And he gave me the concept of the devouring mother. And I quickly looked it up and I started spinning, because it started providing a language and a model for what I was experiencing that I was never able to articulate. That was absolutely not normal at 32 to be playing out the same patterns that I have when I was 12. And that night I came back and I cried from my soul. I had never cried
Mm.
from my soul. It was beyond words. And I looked myself dead straight in the eye in the mirror afterwards and I said, this can't be it. I don't know how I'm going to get myself out. And it wasn't that I had not been trying to, escape the grips of a devouring mother or an enmeshment dynamic with my parents. You try, and that's how I became very successful in my career because I applied everything I could access within myself to one domain, thinking that will be my freedom. Only that became
Mm.
a mirror of the only thing I had ever known, is to be small around false authorities and giving away my power until I am the perfect martyr and doormat, and there again is no me left.
Mm.
And by that time, my conscious forces had fried themselves. Again, it wasn't that I tried affirmations, I tried the vision board, I did light duty spiritual house cleaning. How can you clean a house when it's on fire and the foundations are broken and you're drowning in it? It's like, I can't dust this place. That's not enough. And that was a catalyst. There was a follow-up event, which I'd like to say is a test from the universe to test my resolve. And the path started to unfold thereon. It was January that year that I also had an astrology reading, and I thought that she would just come in and affirm everything that I already know, because of course I already knew everything. And
Mm.
that lodged like a spanner in my paradigm. And she said something. She said, something will happen when you're overseas. I'm like, I don't believe you. I'm like, okay. And lo and behold, it did. And I just dived straight in with her, working on my shadow, opening up languages and paradigms I didn't know existed. And the unraveling started thereon, and I started excavating. I couldn't excavate fast enough. I couldn't hit the surface fast enough to start separating what is true and what is not. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, different modalities find you, so on and so forth. And I am by no means complete. I am not saying that I am. I'm not sitting here on a, enlightened high horse. There is more work to do than was. But that is also a testament that for some people you are so far gone and your exploration needs to be cosmic just to come up for air.
I get that. I get that. Tell me a little bit about your intuition growing up. So you said 2021, that was when it started, but then 2023 was really like the a huge aha moment. Tell me about your intuitive self before that.
Completely shut down, offline, not able to access it because from a shamanic perspective, when you're corded to other people, both through your crown and your sacral, how do you access your own when you
Yeah.
have gunk constantly pumped into you? And at times when intuition did come through, and I was able to at times make moves for myself, they always worked out. But when even if it didn't work out, there was a lesson, but it was of my own accord, so there was always peace in there.
Mm,
But I was not able to access that intuition because it was not allowed. A relationship with self in this environment, in this karmic, lessons for the first half of my life, they're not allowed. But also to do that, you need to have a relationship with your body. I
yeah.
discovered that I had one last year, or the year before, like 2023. It feels like last year. I only discovered that last time. This is not something that you can only access through your mental faculties. And
Mm,
when I don't have the things that I need the most, silence, space, and stillness. So when I say I don't have, I didn't know that I needed that, but also that's not what this environment is built on. Then you can't access your intuition. You don't have access to your inner wisdom. Yes, it is all right there, but we need the right tool and the right job in order to access it and have it. So I would like to say that that is something that I do have access to, but I've not known how to. And it has not been something that has been rewarded, applauded, or allowed to exist.
I love what you just said there, that stillness and silence is needed, and that is not conducive to our society today. That's not conducive to the world today, unless you live in those countries where just life is slow and different. Like I don't live in that country. I live in the country of it's too fast paced.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. So even if, your home is is of a suitable environment. You go into the workplace, depending what workplace looks like for you. And
Yeah.
environment is huge. And I don't feel that it's spoken enough about, I did so much. I don't want to say, sorry, I take that back. I did not do so much work. I'm nowhere near complete. I made steps. But what I was finding, I was still going back to the same environment, which conditioned, which poisoned, which made you sick. So it is very difficult to hold what you have just uncovered, that new state, that energy. And environment has so much more of a bigger imprint than we give credit and kudos to.
Yes, yes. So as you were saying that, something came to mind, like when I have worked with clients that have brought their children to me for energy work. And I would end up saying to them that this is great, all fine and dandy, but eventually I do have to work on you because your
Yes.
child is changing. So you're changing, but you're still walking into that environment. The game's You're changing the game, but yet the people that you're with are not. And so there has to be this either either you kind of level up together or there's a parting.
Yeah. Perfect example. It's not the child.
Yeah.
They're not, absolutely not. It
Yeah.
is very much, they have come into an environment which so much of that they didn't choose.
Yeah. Very
But
much
that's an
so.
entire conversation unto itself. But that's
Well,
a
I mean,
perfect example.
you were a child, you came in, you didn't choose, right? But this was what I believe is part of the journey. There were lessons along the way. There were lessons, there were things you gleaned when you shut yourself down, when you were void of life force, right? Like, so some of all of what you've experienced was also for you to
Yes,
eventually learn what you needed to learn, experience what you needed to experience. So, what would you say has been your biggest lesson?
a big part that has recently come to light, and saying that my partner experienced through his own journey, is accepting that this is your lot in life. And
Mm.
he's connected with that, and I know I have parts that completely resist that, and it's like, no, I don't want it. It's like, no, 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 that's not how it works. Needing to fully and wholly accept on every dimension that this is my lot in life. And that's where you look at different models like soul contract numerology, astrology, human design. They're all mirrors to say this is what the soul chose. The soul has come here to experience this. Negating or rejecting that which the soul wants to experience will create more suffering. The pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional, as the quote, as the saying goes. So coming to terms with this is the lot in life. I am where I am because this is where I should be, because this is how things had to also play out. Did they have to play out to the degree that they did? No, because other people failed on their contract. There are characters in my game that have done an exceptional job at upholding their contract. If anything, they've taken it too far. And there are others, and there are others who completely failed at their contract. They did not hold up the agreement that the souls made before we incarnated. So truly coming to connecting and acceptance of that is of primary importance. And even last year, I do go through periods of resistance, of fixing, of all these things, but that is a distorted energy that is
Mm.
playing out, that is on very deep, insidious, sometimes level, unconscious levels, keeping you trapped. Questioning everything is also imperative. My partner is phenomenal at this. He does not take anything on its face value, which is sensational. And that is also a big part of being the seeker, is learning to question everything. Questioning,
Yeah.
why am I saying this right now instead of this? Why is this thought so prevalent? But
Yeah.
even more so for me is feeling, learning how to feel. Without feeling, I have not been able to orient myself. When it is so shut down, the body becomes heavy. There is simply no orientation, no guidance system within the world. There is no ability, not no ability, there is limited ability for me to manifest without working for emotion with emotions. And that is ultimately the body, that is the feminine. And what have I shut down the most? Not just in this lifetime, in many lifetimes that I have been shown about how the false adherence to the distorted patriarchy is so wounding, and what we are doing to the divine feminine, and not that that is something outside of ourselves, it is us. And that is one of the biggest life lessons that I am still in that arc. I am still in the infant stages of discovering,
Yes.
of embodying and feeling that resonate through every part of myself. So these are
Yes.
very big themes. These are very big life lessons that the soul has chosen on a spiritual level. But it is a lot in life. You know, I cannot play any other character than Eleanor in this life. I can be many different versions, but this is my lot. These are my lessons. This is what I need to work
Yeah.
through. And, you know, if we had the languages earlier, could it have been different? Possibly.
Mhm.
But reality also plays out as it needs to. That is not a cop out. You are not, no one can take the back seat and just, you know, cruise along for the ride.
Well, you can if you want.
Yeah, and it's not
Um,
without its karmic
right.
consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's your language, accept this as your lot in life. So when I heard that, my mind was like, mm, let me see if I can find the language around it. Is that simply being in a space where it is what it is? It's gonna be, let it be. I'm trying to, because I don't, it had a negative feel to me, but I don't believe you intend it to be negative, right?
No, no, of course not. It's not about just laying like being laissez-faire about things. It's not about all, you know, love and light, everything will be okay. It's like, no, this is your lot in life because you are invited to do so much growth, to dig so deep into yourself, to understand why this is your lot in life anyway, to
Yeah.
excavate your lot, break it all apart, tear it all apart as you need, as you see fit. Daniel was channeling for me, and you know, showing the visual that my lot, you know, boundaries is something that I have none of, and that explains so many things. So he was, you know, giving the imagery that my lot in life was like, you know, the boundary, the fence was like so short, made out of, you know, stones that don't even sit together properly on each other. Anyone can come in. There is, you know, it's a free for all here. And then I wonder why I'm so energetically depleted, why I get taken
Mm,
advantage of, why this, why I don't stand up for myself, all of these things. So even with your lot in life, you can create a fortress. But we need to know that we have, you know, a lack of boundary. The lot needs finesse,
yes, yes,
you know.
yes,
How are we developing this lot? It's not that it's like, yeah, you've been given, you know, a minefield. I mean, some people have been as well. But then it's how do we access the parts of ourselves that we need to in order to create the lot that we also desire out of life as
yes,
well? It's,
yes,
you know, imagine an actual, you know, this is my parcel of land. What are we going to build on it? But before I can dare build on it, what's there that hasn't been cleared? And that's where I
yeah,
faltered in the first instance. I made a very solid attempt of, you know, I published books, I did all these things, but why did it come crashing down after 2 years? Which is not a long period of time to have quote unquote success. It's quite brief because what I was building on was not based on truth, was not based on love either. So inherently, I could have, you know, sure, it looked like a wonderful mansion to the outside, but the foundations were shot. So it was going to crumble down. And that's that again, that's on my lot now. That energy is on my lot to clear. There's things under the surface that I cannot see. There's dimensions above that I am yet to access as well. But this is what the soul has come in to experience. So yes, at times it's like, hey soul, you know, how about you deal with this one for me?
yes. Don't you wish that it could just be like that? Yes,
But
it
definitely not
does.
with the negative intention of being, you know, to not, you know, to negate responsibility from it. It's like, oh well, you know, I'll just leave it like here. Again, one more thing before we'll
Yeah.
continue. Daniel was again channeling and the question was posed to me, in what condition do you want to leave your soul in? When the character
Mm.
of Eleanor is done with it, how do I want to return it back? Because I got it in a fragmented, distorted, I got a deeply disempowered version. Now, the soul's going to continue to pick another character in whatever dimension. What are they going to get? Am I going to leave it in the same disempowered, fragmented, distorted way? No, I have a responsibility to this soul that has chosen to be me. And if it chooses to be a disempowered woman in another lifetime because it really likes that character, then shall she have more access to power than she's ever had? Shall she have already broken through that and she will be able to pick up on that a lot quicker than me, for example?
That is such an amazing question. Like that, that is like gold there. And as I love everything you said,
Thank you.
and I'm gonna sit with that one because, yeah, I've
We
kind
ought
of
to.
already told the universe I don't want to come back again. I want to be the guide. I want to be the ones I want to evolve my soul to the point where I get to be the guide for all the souls coming in and help them along. That's what I want to do the next time. I think I've learned all my lessons.
You'll go to like the Cosmic Council or the federation that decides. It's like you put in your
Yes,
application for the job.
yes, yes. I
Hope
volunteer
they
as
get it.
tribute. Yes.
Volunteers should be, yeah. Exactly.
So, Eleanor, if you think in terms of mind, body, soul, you've touched a lot on soul, a lot on body. If we're souls here having human experience, we learned our lessons at some point, but it does, once that spiritual journey starts, it does take work to get them all working together in partnership to get them working aligned for all the opportunities and possibilities and that catalyst for change. That's how I kind of coin. Which one was harder for you to master, get on board, get in line?
That's a great question. At different points, some things were easier to access than others. I would say from mental would be the easiest because I've been working with that faculty. And I have a lot of access to that and it like that air energy as well. Not so much, but I've always been working with it. So I can, I can work with that. And I love writing. So when things get too much, I go to the page. I can work with
Mm.
that.
Is
I
that
would say
something you've always done? You've always done that even? Yeah. Okay.
as an only child, when there is quote unquote no one to necessarily talk to or soundboard, then I turned
Mm.
to the page. So it was in 2017 that I found the journal, and it has been, when I don't go to it, I'm not a great person. With if I have not journaled, then things aren't great. But at the same time, it's not to say that is for everyone. Some people can live
Right.
their life and so be
Right.
it. And whatever it is that works for you in whatever
Yes.
season you're in. I
Yes.
would still say that emotions, the spiritual body and the physical body, the three of them as one, they're all one anyway. But connecting, bridging that connection and understanding where it is and listening to it when you have never gone somewhere and you have no map of the land and
Mm.
you're
Mm.
not aware of anything that's happening, those three would be more challenging at different times than the other. But that again is also, a big part of the lesson and why the soul chose this life and chose the setup that it did was to have those things, I don't say taken away, but keeping at arm's length. And that is part of the lesson to realize that they are right here.
Yeah.
There is no going over there to get it. It is right here. That is the homecoming. So sometimes, in the right environment and the right trance state, all of those things they're right there. You access it. It's not hard. It's just being in the right state and knowing how to get into that state as well.
Yeah. And being willing.
And being willing,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there's many different other bodies. There's your astral body. There's so many different ones. But if anything, if I still had to pick between them all, it would it would be a mix between the spiritual body and the physical. Not that
Yeah.
they're again, they're one is a reflection of the other, where the other one is at. But that is again, that is the journey. And sometimes I go through seasons where you're very much into the spiritual, you're very much into the journey. And then other seasons, it's like the body's really needing something. And the season can last a day as well. This isn't talking about, months on end.
Right, right. Or it can be months on end, can
It
be
can be
years
months
on
on
end,
end.
right? Like it,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
You just never know.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
but that to me, that's what I found now is part of the beauty of the journey. Even when I get frustrated and because I'm still sitting in what I like to say, I'm just still sitting in the muck and mire. I just can't seem to get no, 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 right? There's still beauty in the journey, in the things that I learn about myself, I learn about my soul, in the things that I heal through, work through, move through. There's still beauty in that, even when it doesn't seem to go very fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's something that, I'm astrologically like an Aries moon, and we love things to be very quick.
Yeah.
And there is pros to that, and then that can also be quite hazardous. But that is not how the
Yes.
feminine energy works as well. That is a deep, heavy void. It doesn't have to be heavy, but it is something that is insurmountable to put into words. How do you put into words the depth of a void of existence itself?
Yeah.
And that is not something you can't move through, especially when we're starting out, as cosmic toddlers, to move through the darkness with such speed. So yeah, very similar to you. That is something that I do catch myself out on. It's like I can't move through this. This isn't the invitation to just rush through it and just get back to my regular programming. That's not what's happening here.
Yeah. I've had to learn to just be with this a
Hmm.
lot. Like, just be with this. Kind of like I would say it is what it is. Just accept it, you know? We just have to be with it. This is how it is right now. I've had to do that a lot, and that's okay.
It is. Surprisingly, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Eleanor, life, you've had this beautiful shift, this beautiful perspective change. Um, it sounds as if you've got the boundaries up with your mom.
There's more
Um,
boundaries than there were.
yeah.
Definitely, there are absolutely gaps. The mother wound is the overarching theme of my life. Like moon in the 10th
Mm,
house, this is mother wound energy. This is very deep, and it's beyond the physical mother. It is beyond the one that is standing in front of you and being the projection of that which you have not resolved within yourself. This is
mm,
the cosmic mother. Ultimately, this is Mother as we know Mother Earth. This isn't Mother in just the birth giver. This is of course the internal mother as well, and realizing that this is the mother that we always needed. So there are many dimensions to this, and understanding that the invitation for mother is much more than resolving that physical one in front of you. Now, of course, that is very important. And
right.
the exploration that happens in that relationship is again cosmic to its level. And again, in a channeling session, it's like I need to go back. I need to find where the initial agreement was made. So deep within the cosmos. Like it's again right there. It's not that hard to get to, but in the right state and knowing where you want to go. That is
Yeah.
important because that agreement needs to be nullified. Because if I don't nullify it, then the next character that the soul plays will continue it. And it's like,
Mm,
do I want anyone to go through this? No. Pick another lesson maybe for a few lifetimes, but if that's what the soul wants, it is what it is. But that resolution, the reason I share that is to show that that resolution can be so cosmic, so deep, and I don't know when I'll get to that point. It could be decades. It could be in a dream. I don't have that, you know, direction yet, but the resolution is about lifetimes. It is about, again, returning that soul in its most purest form as I can
mm,
and not have these outstanding contracts and agreements carry over from lifetimes that impact your experience in this lifetime.
Wow. That's beautifully said. You're still human, working on such a profound journey. But and I just ground us a minute. Life still happens. We're still in relationship. You still have that relationship with your mother, that, this physical one, this, the mother who birthed you. When life gets messy, when things get challenging, how do you help yourself through it now that you didn't know back then? How is it different?
Allowing to feel through the whole wave of emotions and not completely shut them down and
Mm,
disregard them. Of course, there are still things that are very triggering and the old patterns are there. But now
yeah.
I have awareness that I've just done the same thing that I've always done. And I might do that another 10 times, 20 times before it's released as well. But allowing to feel the emotions when it comes to that dynamic and to locate myself in those emotions. I did not do that beforehand. I did not see so much of what this was doing to me. And I was very hard on myself because
Mm,
beating myself into submission. It's like, why can't this? Why can't that? That's not healthy. That's not what, that's just not
right.
helpful, period.
Right.
No explanation needed. So allowing the range of emotions to come up and come through and processing them and acknowledging them, that is pivotal because up until 18 months ago, so what, they were all just shoved under the hood. And where
Yeah.
does it get stored? In the body. And the body has just become so very heavy, so very tired as well.
Mm,
So that is one absolutely, imperative thing that has allowed me to start moving thing. But I am so grateful from 2021 when I met my then best friend, now partner, to have someone who is so supportive on this journey is
mm.
is, is everything in a way as well. Because to unravel by yourself is for people who do this on their own,
It's lonely.
oh, it's
It's
something
lonely.
else in there. But to have someone who your nerve is already signals to your nervous system, it's safe, and that allows the ugly parts to come up. That has its own beauty. Now, of course, I
Yeah.
resisted. I'm like, no, I don't want you to see me like this. It's like, no, this is you. This,
Yeah.
that is not separate to me. That is exactly who I am and who I should be given everything as well. So they're essential, but everyone is on their own path and they will find what they need in their own timing and in their own strides as well.
Yes. Yes. And I want to go back to what you said when um you, some of the negative self-talk that you said, like that just doesn't help anybody. Yet I do feel that we are so programmed and conditioned to be so hard on ourselves. We're so programmed and conditioned to, I just heard my mom say it. That was so stupid of me. It's like,
Mhm.
my ears are just like burning, like, oh, what would little Karen, why do you say that to little Karen? My heart just went to, oh my gosh, I wish you could hear how your soul feels, because I felt it for her. You know what I mean? And I think
Mhm.
it is it can be such a difficult thing to stop and hear ourselves. But yet it is one of the biggest things that on this spiritual journey we have to learn to do is to stop. I don't even know. I don't even have the words, but I think you completely understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Well, it goes back to that space, that stillness and silence. How can you hear yourself if all the channels are on, if you're
Yeah.
constantly getting bombarded, if you do not allow yourself to cultivate that self-awareness either? Like I did not have self-awareness. That is not something that just, yeah, we have
Yeah.
access to it, but this isn't, again, that is also such a bastardized term in the life coachy space and everything, cultivate self-awareness as a leader. Yeah, that involves your unconscious. That involves your shadow. You know,
Right.
that was not, I had no self-awareness at all. Not, was I paying attention to how my body was feeling when it didn't want to go into certain environments? When I couldn't wake up after 11, 12 hours of sleep when I was working with certain people. Was I paying attention to that? No. Were you paying attention to, when I thought I did wrong by a maternal or paternal impact, the child was bad, and I would go and judge myself for that and beat myself up so no one else could do that for me.
Mm,
Was I listening to myself? Was I self-aware in that moment? Of course not. Because the
right.
shrouding and the cloaking and the layers that prevent you from accessing that are too heavy. So all of this, think positive bullshit, it's like, well, yeah, as if I haven't tried that,
I'm
but it
so
doesn't,
with you there.
right? But it doesn't work when the unconscious only knows a certain, when the programming is only tuned to a certain
Correct. Correct.
to a certain program.
And what you're just saying, like it requires you to lean in order to see the shadow and work through the shadow. That's what's necessary. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
absolutely.
matter all the positive affirmations you put in if you don't lean in to do the inner work and fully truly see and allow the expansion to see something clearly true, even if it hurts like hell, you don't really make the leap.
No, that's right. And just, that negative t self-talk, like people fundamentally don't believe that they're worthy. And that could be from lifetimes, or that
Yep.
could be because the youngster, like the inner child, which is you, made a decision. And from that decision, a whole paradigm has been born.
Yes.
Now, until that isn't located, then all the affirmations and all the, pretty cards in the world, they will not land.
Yes. Completely agree. So, Eleanor, if you think about, we've just had such an amazing conversation about so many things. We went so many tangents. What would be one thing you'd like our listeners to take away?
I'll stick with the message that I say. I've got, Daniel, things that Daniel says coming through. And whilst that is, great truth for me, it's been only the thing that landed with me is only love is real. And that
Mm,
which isn't born out of love is not meant to last. It cannot last. And sure, it might look good on the outside, but it definitely does not feel good on the inside. If the heart is not involved, then it's not simply not meant to last. And for us to arrive to that state of, is this foundation on love? Does this have the heart online with them? We need to question everything.
yeah.
And through that questioning, do we start to realize that no, this is false. This is a false paradigm. This is an artificial environment. This is artificial at its core. So if it is not born with love, one of the greatest truths, then what is it? And then how
Mm,
is that serving us? And sometimes we need to consciously lean in and say, look, this is something that we need to do because the ego's got to eat. So understanding that, but when you make it conscious, you can work through it. But
yeah.
that was one of the truths that when it landed, when I was in my own experience of the void, and that is the greatest anchor that I can experience.
Mm, mm, beautiful. Eleanor, thank you so much for this conversation again. So deep, so enlightening. I've had a blast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Brenda. I loved it too.